What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast that is a proud partner of the Eurostep Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your host, Numac, coming to you after a 22-10 Packers loss to the Philadelphia Eagles in one of probably the worst game in the last 2 months that we've had the displeasure of watching. And so to break down the end of the Packers season with me is my lovely co-host Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how are you doing, buddy?
Hello, hello, hello. You mentioned it. Worst game of the last 2 months, probably the second worst game of the year. If
Yeah,
maybe that Lions game, that
yeah,
home Lions game.
yep,
Yeah, just this game didn't have no alibi. It was UGLY. That's what it was.
yeah. I guess let's hop right into it. We can go over some stats. Jordan Love, 20 of 33, three interceptions and two sacks. Uh, what did you? Oh, I thought you
I
put
did
up four. I
three.
was like, I'm looking at it. It says only three. Josh Jacobs, 18 carries for 81 yards and a touchdown. Uh, Nothing else there for the run game. Jaden Reed, four catches, 46 yards. Josh Jacobs, three catches, 40 yards. On T-Vix, two for 39. Tucker Craft, 5 for 26. Um, yeah, it's going to be a lot about the offense. But before we even get into it, the game feels almost over just in vibes within the first 10 seconds after Keyshawn Nixon takes the ball out of the end zone and fumbles it on the first play. And something inexplicable that I think you, me, and the rest of Packers fan base is wondering about is how in the hell didn't that get overturned? I thought we saw like every single angle that we could have that showed Keyshawn Nixon having possession of the ball and getting that fumble back. But yeah, I don't know what the hell happened there, but all I know is it's not an excuse for why they lost. But the refs were dog shit tonight, and I'm sorry for making this next explicit pod so early. I thought they were horrendous. Like there was the that call didn't get overturned, and then the big hold on Saquon Barkley on the tush push fake on 3rd and 1. Like that was a blatant hold that just didn't get called, and so very annoyed with the refs tonight, especially with Keyshawn Nixon getting called for unsportsmanlike conduct out of bounds when he threw Saquon down. Like that's the most ticky
Uh,
tack thing I've ever seen. Like there was a lot more that could have gotten called and didn't, but then they called that one. It was just a really bad night for the refs, and this concludes my bitching of the refs for the rest of the game because they weren't the reason they lost tonight.
yeah, we have to make that very clear because people will vent their frustration in any sort of way.
Yeah,
The only thing that I would push back on is the Nixon thing because it was ticky tacky. The problem is he's pushing Barkley. Barkley's almost like like how big the out of bounds like sideline is,
yeah,
like the white paint, and then there's like the first down marker. Barkley's foot is almost like past like the first down marker, like out of bounds. Like not what I'm saying, like he's getting a first down. I'm saying no,
depth wise.
he's that off of the sidelines or out of bounds area, and Keyshawn two hand shoves him, even if it's very light.
That
So that's
play
where I would just say,
happens every week, and
oh
and
yeah,
and that's where I get annoyed. That's not a new play that happens. They just happened to throw the flag on that one when they didn't have to,
yeah.
because it wasn't chippy like before that. Like it just wasn't,
No, it
and
wasn't
so it
really a
wasn't
chippy
like
game.
they had to rein it in and make a statement with that call. No, I just think it was a bad call because
It's not a star player though.
I'm recalling Keyshawn. Oh, I Saquon. My
Saquon.
bad. I mean, sure. I mean, yeah, whatever. That's that. Keyshawn
Yeah,
though, I, in coverage he was fine. The fumble is just
yeah,
egregious. And I know it's not his fault. He got blown. Got blown right into the head. Like the guy had tackled
yeah.
him, put his helmet right into his face.
Oren Burks.
Yeah, and that's just tough to hang on the ball. But then I wasn't a fan of his kick returning a whole lot today whatsoever.
No.
There was a couple times I'm like, if you cut back the way you were actually running, you probably break it off for more. And the decision to bring it out the first time was a mistake. The people who were yelling about him bringing out the second time, like it was at the 1 yard line, he couldn't kneel it down there, like it,
Yes.
like that. I had no issues with him taking it out the rest of the game because Jake Elliott and company were kicking it short. But I just think he did a poor job returning regardless.
Yeah, it was um, an exercise in futility. That
Yeah,
was his every kickoff return.
yeah,
And then the first one, I mean, you mentioned is like Eagles players are already calling that it's their ball when it's clearly in Keyshawn Nixon's hands, like early on.
yep,
And I don't know. I've never seen something like that be reversed, but there's clear evidence that like where are you going to be calling it? It's like the referees aren't around, so you're solely basing it on replay assist.
yeah.
And I don't know, but the overall point is that when that comes in, however many seconds in the game, eight,
7.
9, whatever, 7 seconds in the game, it already puts the Packers in this hill that they have to climb.
Yep.
And we were, Discord is plenty active throughout the game. And I know people get passionate and all that stuff, but I said at the time, it's like that fumble just throws out like your game plan. The scripted play is like everything that you wanted to do and get it like set a tone, set a tempo. It's gone. That to me was just like it's unironically it set the tone for the entire game of just like kind of twisting the wind. They were a team that just lost their juice in one play and didn't really. There were some plays and moments that kind of helped them recover it, but it was just as we've seen the last couple of weeks, they just got in their own way, and it whether it was the Jacobs fumble in the Minnesota game or everything in the Bears game, frankly, it was just like, good God, just try to get some relief.
Yeah, it wasn't great, and I think this pod is going to be most about the offense because they were an issue today, and they did everything that we've talked about. They couldn't do the last 3 weeks. They just kept it going today. Um, I guess within the context of it all, let's start early here. EJ going down is very bad for the offensive line. They have to throw Travis Glover in there. He has a very poor day. A couple of holding calls and just can't hang. He gets 3 holding calls. He gets pulled in favor of Kadeem Telfort, who also just can't hang and gets demolished the entire game. Um, Jane Reed goes down in the third quarter with what looks like to be probably a broken arm or dislocated shoulder. Like that was a really tough hit by Blankenship. That just is football. Romeo Dobbs goes down with with a probable concussion after a ball in the end zone. Josh Myers, I think I saw post game. They don't think he tore his ACL, but possibly a lower leg fracture. That was in the fourth quarter. Quay Walker tweaked his ankle, I think in the third quarter or early fourth.
It was like late. It was after the Packers like true last drive.
Yeah, and so just I'm sure I'm forgetting one. A smattering of injuries today, and it's just tough to overcome that many injuries. And but in the context before all those injuries happened, the first half of this game was abysmal, Jordan.
It was
It was
terrible.
abysmal. They couldn't get anything going. The run game was half working, like they'd get 3-4 yards of play and whatnot, but they couldn't convert on third down. Uh, Jordan Love takes a couple sacks in the first half, and then the interceptions that he threw that wasn't the bomb in the end zone. They were just abysmal. They were bad, and especially the one over the middle at the end of the second half or the first half. It's just
Yep.
bad. Like Jordan Love just has to be better, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. Like he didn't play at all the last month, like what we saw him play in the month before that, and at the end of last year. Like I don't know what happened or what went on, but he just looked uncomfortable in the pocket for the last month. He was missing throws, a lot of them high. Like his first one,
Not reading coverages that I mean the his second pick, the one that went to Zach Bond,
the one that
that's just
after he almost threw a pick to Zach Bond on that
the
flat,
play
the
earlier.
play earlier. I thought Zach Bond caught that, but
Yeah. But
yeah,
Zach Bond is just like sitting underneath
yep,
and he doesn't see him.
doesn't see him at all. And it's just a horrible, horrible throw. Like you couldn't have thrown it to him any worse. or any better, frankly. And so I I mentioned it a couple weeks ago. I think it was this week's preview or the Bears preview that I'm fine with Jordan Love playing like Brett Favre if you can make the throws that go with it. We got all of the bad Brett Favre today. Like it was just not good. Like his first couple of throws were just not there.
No.
There's a time when they kicked the field goal to go up or to score their first points at 3-0 that a better ball to Malik Heath in the flat probably scores a touchdown. It was very similar to the play they ran against the Giants last year that Malik Heath scored on. Like a better ball, he catches that, but instead it bounced at the goal line. And he was running his route at the goal line, so you got to give him a chance to catch it. And then the Bull Melton route on that same drive in the back of the end zone, Brady talked about like if you cut in then out, you're just not gonna be able to get there fast enough. But a better ball to Bull Melton too, that probably gets there. His first interception to Don that was targeted Dontavian Wicks and Darius Slay. If he airs it out, it's a good ball, but he just hasn't had the accuracy or the quality of throws for at least a month, and it showed. It's been really bad, and I'm not. That's not to say I'm out on the guy because I'm not. I think he can still be one of the best QBs in the NFL, but he sure as hell hasn't played like it the past month.
No. No. That it's I don't think there's a coincidence that a lot of the throws that were successful for the Packers today were kind of out routes. Those are hard passes to complete because it looks simple by design, but you're still throwing, 10, 15, 20 yards to your target, even if he's 4 yards upfield.
And that was
Like it's just,
the first Tucker Craft I think third down conversion. That was a good throw. That was
yep,
a good throw, but he hasn't been able to throw that consistently. And like
yep,
I was excited. It was a good throw, but
yep.
he hasn't been able to do it like game in and game out or drive in and drive out.
And it's, you know, I think part of it was just this is just a weird year. Like, there's gonna be a lot of things talked about with Jordan Love this offseason. It's gonna be were the Packers too was it too soon that they committed to him with so few games under his belt and all this stuff. All the basically the reverse of what we were talking about Jordan Love this time last year. That comes with losses. That comes with struggles. That comes with regression. Like I think everything contributed to that on top of the injuries. And on top of that, he lost his top three wide receivers in the span of a week. So by the end of it, it's like, who is he really throwing to? It's Dontavia Wicks, it's Tucker Kraft, Josh Jacobs. That's about it. Like the war of attrition of football struck the Packers in a big way. But I just felt like for all the I think Jordan Love is indicative of the Packers season in general, is that there were a lot of expectations, a lot of promise. We can still say that the Packers still have a bright future, even with this slip, even with this wild card loss. But in order to reach that, one, sure as hell helps to be healthy throughout the season. Sure as hell helps to feel comfortable and feel like he's in good rapport with all of his targets, which, as we have been saying for the last few weeks, was not there. It really wasn't. They talked about plenty on the broadcast this week, more than a lot of weeks, and we've certainly seen plenty of Kevin Burkhardt and Tom Brady, but it's like Jaden Reed, his second half disappearing act. I'm not going to put that all on him, but like
On
that's where,
the season second half.
yeah, yeah, season second half. The problem is that it just never gelled in a very consistent way. There was no straight line. It's two ups and downs, peaks and valleys. That's where Jordan Love was at, and we thought that Toyotathon after the bye week, him getting healthier, we thought he was kind of turning the corner, and then once that confidence, I think as a fan, eroded away, like real again, not to keep using this as an example, but that Saints game, it just felt I
They were
someone who
go ahead.
someone who plays with so much confidence and suddenly shows so much restraint. That felt off, and
Yeah.
it never reversed.
Yeah, and for talking about that Saints game for a team that it was so bad in their passing defense, like that could have been a game for them to carve them up, build some confidence
Yeah.
up, and they just didn't. Like
Yep.
they were just kind of just lollygagged in there, 134-0, and then we're none the wiser for how this team needed to operate, and it showed going into Minnesota. and then it showed going into Chicago, and it showed going into this week. Like they didn't build any sort of momentum in the passing game. And I think your point about not having Christian Watson and not having then Romeo Dobbs, not having Jaden Reed as this game comes to a close, yeah, it's impactful when it comes to how you're trying to operate and be a positive thrower. But the accuracy just wasn't there this year, and
Yep.
it cost them at a lot of points. Like sure, you can also blame a whole lot of drops. Like there were a lot of drops by a lot of guys. Not today. I don't think I remember a single drop that was like
Uh, well, it'd be really harsh to give Wicks that drop that he had like in triple coverage, kind of in that middle of the
oh,
field
I'm
range
not giving
where,
that to him.
yeah,
No, that's
yeah,
that's not on him.
it was a danger zone ball
It
thrown
was a
by Love
hospital
more than
ball.
anything. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
To the point where he goes down, he has his hands on his head, and we're just hoping that he's mad at himself for not catching it versus
and
being,
not the third wide receiver that gets hurt today.
yeah. And so, yeah, I'm frustrated with how this game went because they had multiple opportunities to win it, and they just never ever ever took advantage of it. Because like, I don't even like the offense. I don't even want to like talk about anybody else because everybody else played well. Josh Jacobs had what was it, 80 yards, 81 yards,
He
18 carries. That's 4.5 per. That's good, and that
he
big
had like a
touchdown.
hundred.
He had
He had 40 receiving yards too, so 121
121.
yards from scrimmage.
Good game from Josh Jacobs. I have nothing
Yeah,
but good things to say about him today. Uh, I mean, hell, even Manny Wilson had that catch and run at the end of the game that kept the drive going, kind of thing. That if they were going to actually make it close. Um, saw a little bit of Chris Brooks today. That was funny. I saw him lined up out wide at one point, which was very funny. Um,
yeah.
albeit it was a screen, so it kind of made sense, but it was just a funny visual. But I mean, pass catchers. Jaden Reed catches all four of his targets. Uh, somehow Dontavian Wicks has 6 targets and only 2 catches. I feel like it was more than that, but I guess it wasn't. Um, I guess the interception counts as one. The one out of bounds counts as one. Yeah, whatever. Regardless, Tucker
Two
Craft.
interceptions
Yep,
were, yeah.
Tucker Craft catches 5 of his targets, or all 5 of his targets. Like
Two
there's
craft rafts. Shout out John.
yep. And then Romeo Dobbs caught 2 of his 2 targets. Like caught both of his targets.
Yeah.
I think all the receivers played well. It's just I think once EJ went down, they kept getting positive plays on plays where Travis Glover or Kadeem Telfort were holding, and that was the biggest issue, is that they kept shooting themselves in the foot, just like they had all off or all season essentially. Uh, they finished this game with 8 penalties for 85 yards. That's just the same old shit we've been seeing all season long, and it just sucks that it had to be that way. Like I talked about we talked about the penalties at the front and the refs being annoying, but the 2 holds are on young guys, which like again you can't really fault them. But then Keyshawn's unsportsmanlike, we went over that.
Slayton.
Slayton had that unsportsmanlike at the end of the game, which like I get it, it's emotional, but there's still 4 other penalties in there, and I can't think of what they are. But
Um, you mentioned it too. Rob Domofsky tweeted at the time of Elton Jenkins' injury. Going back to Elton Jenkins' injury, the Packers' regular offensive line played 830 snaps together during the regular season. No other offensive line combo in the league played that many per ESPN stats and info.
well, I think it was like um Travis Glover played 13 snaps this season.
Yes.
I don't think Telfort played at all. If I'm not mistaken, or
Um,
might have had something similar. You can check PFF if you have time. But then at the end of the game, Josh Myers gets knocked out. Not literally gets knocked out of the game, and
yep,
Jacob Monk comes in, former 6th round pick of this year. He
of
doesn't
this
play a
year.
single snap, and so it's like it just injuries made this game so much harder than it already was going to be, and it was just frustrating because I don't even like have gripes with play calling right now. Like
No,
I think the play calling was fine, just the execution was bad. I think this game solely falls on the shoulders of Jordan Love just not playing as well as he needed to. And that's really harsh for a guy that is only in his second full season of starting, but it's appropriate for the franchise quarterback who just got this big deal and now needs to play up to it. Like I hate to be that guy, but now it's time. Like it's coming in the next year, he needs to be more confident, he needs to be more consistent and accurate in his throws. Like a quarterback that is of his caliber should not be struggling as much in the flat as he does. Like the throw to Malik Heath on fourth down at the end of the game, if that ball's on target, he doesn't have to jump to get it and he doesn't land out of bounds. Like he just needs to be better.
Telfer played 23 snaps, by the way.
So a total of 35 between three new linemen that played this game,
Yeah.
which is nuts. Which is
Um,
nuts.
yeah, I'm not. Jordan Love is probably the biggest culprit. I'm not going to lie about that. I'm not going to say anything different because, you know, again, it's part of the circumstances, part of the context of the season. There were very few weeks consistently where he was right, where you could look at him and be like, that's, you could look at the Cardinals game and he's aired it out. And despite, the Cardinals at the time being, a lackluster opponent versus some of the teams that are playing at the time. But there, for all the sharp progression that he made at the end of last season, if you add an injury, if you add in lost time, if you add him trying to get healthy and trying to be on the same page, I think a lot of the things that his season comes down to is he lost some polish. He lost the things that made him really effective by the end of last season. And I think part of that, it's a synergy. If Jordan Love is erratic, if the peaks and valleys are starting to get a little more peaker and vallier, that's going to affect how the wide receivers play. Like I, I don't know. We'll have a lot more on Jordan Love as we kind of think about this season, and we certainly have a lot more time to talk about it now. But for anybody looking at this game and expecting big changes, or it's disappointing, no doubt. But today was such a complete meltdown, and so much went against them. The turnovers, Brandon McManus missing his second field goal of the season, the opening field goal, or not field goal, kickoff, them fumbling it. I don't know how you win a game on its face when you lose a turnover battle 4-0. The problem is, as you mentioned earlier, the Eagles gave the Packers so much help and being like, "Hey, this game is open if you want to get into it." And the Packers consistently, until they scored their first touchdown on the opening play of the fourth quarter, said, no thanks."
Yeah.
There was it was so much of their problems were self-inflicted,
Mm-hmm.
and they had so much help to be for that game to matter to them, that that to me is the biggest indictment on anything, is that you can't game plan for things going against you, or turnovers or anything like that. But the fact that they consistently turned over the ball, would get help, forcing the Eagles to a field goal, forcing the Eagles to punt multiple times after turnovers, and it didn't matter. Like that is just awful. That is awful, and it sucks to wear on the biggest game of the season. Do or die. If you lose, you're going home, kind of thing. But I think that's where any growing pains, anything that you learn from, it's like you can't plan for this, but how do you respond to those moments of where you have to be resilient and you just folded? They folded. Whether they meant to or not, they certainly were playing the game, but they just didn't have any firepower offensively. And Jordan Love was the biggest reason why, that it just didn't matter. And that's a shame. That truly is a shame.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And I think where I come out of this game, and you know I don't like being this type of podcast or this type of like fan. I'm
Moral victory.
no, I'm done with Rich Bisaccia. I'm done with Rich
Yeah,
Bisaccia,
that honestly,
and
that
and I'm done with Adam Stenavich.
I don't know about Stenovitz really because
It's
I
it's his offense. Like he is the offensive coordinator. I understand that Matt LaFleur's playbook and he's the guy that calls plays. I want a different person than Adam Stenavich to reinvigorate this offense and how it's called because it's gotten stale. Like it, I would not be surprised, Jordan, if we come into next year and the offense looks the exact same with its play calls and there's no new wrinkles in it whatsoever.
I don't think that with that necessarily again. This might be reserved for a bigger discussion, but I
Probably
think Stenovich will be the bigger discussion. Rich Bisaccia,
he need
good lord,
he
man.
needs to be gone.
Like what all the leash that is given to him because he was a successful interim coach for the fucking Las Vegas Raiders. And I get it. He's a culture guy and all this stuff, but like so much has gone wrong for this team
On special
on special
teams.
teams. And Keyshawn Nixon, who was easily the biggest point of like that we turned to that, hey, he returned a special teams touchdown when in 2022 when the Packers are trying to make their run to the playoffs and like him turning into a regular contributor and playing a vital role for this team is like a good development project.
Mm-hmm.
But like they turned through kickers so much. We talked about kickers way too much for a team that had way bigger issues as it turned out.
Yeah.
Like kicking was secondary by the end of the season.
Well,
As we
because Brad McManus came in, like it was
exactly.
right.
But it's not but the yeah, I'm gonna be probably not talking as clear as I want to be. But like all these problems that still remain with like committing penalties, like
Yeah.
it we just I just hate that playoff loss to the 49ers happened. That special teams is such a big I mean, even going to the Seahawks game with the Brandon Bostic stuff, but it's such a big issue for the Packers that anybody just like it's like a meme. It's like, oh, look at the special teams drink, like bingo, like that kind of thing of just like special teams gaff. But we put such an importance on it, and it's not. I'm not saying it's not important, but it's like they're always going to screw up. These players are not good enough to start on offense or defense, no matter what. If you have a good kicker, great. If you have a good punter, good. But it's like the guy what does he do? What do you do here? It's the office space meme. Like, so I just broke my rule about we're not going to call for any changes. And I just go, Rich Versace, get the hell out of here.
I mean, yeah. I mean, I'm with you. I started it, so I can't say anything
Yeah.
there. Yeah. It just the offense doesn't work. I don't know what happened. We talked about it at like what Jordan Love what went wrong with him this season. But as far as Adam Stenavich, like I just don't know what he's really brought to the offense since he's become the offensive coordinator. Like I just don't know. And I feel like they could find a different offensive coordinator to help out with Matt LaFleur's lift on that stuff because he gets in his own way. I think LaFleur does. Like I think he's still a good coach, but I'd like to get a different brain in the room to help him with this because we know he has issues with clock management, with fourth down conversions and when to go for it and things like that. But I would like to see this offense have some more wrinkles in it. They have talented players at the specialist positions. Let's make something of it. Like I think the run game looked really good this year, and maybe that's
Oh,
because Josh Jacobs is that good.
he's so good.
But but like
Is it
part of the Josh Jacobs that like they did a lot of counters, like the where they fake the
the like pistol action kind of trap?
yeah
Yeah.
where they fake that one, then he Love turns around and hands it to Josh Jacobs. Like that's a good play that worked for them a lot this year. And like it's more of that misdirection and motion that is really valuable. But I don't know, maybe I'm misguided with my Stanovich quote unquote hate right now.
Well, I think this is honestly something I probably will write about. Um, But when you go and think of the season, like this again, this loss was indicative of things that we had seen through the season. Nothing, nothing by which the Packers lost today came as a shock. It didn't. It would be it would feel a lot different if they played well. If they were 12-5 and had a couple slips here and there, but you look at it as like, okay, they were improved on what they did last year. They're a better team by record, better team in defense, certainly. Offense, you can probably quibble whether they were, but by the end of it, at least of last season, that they were firing all cylinders, and that could not have been further from the truth. It was one sided. But I think the biggest thing for me, and Love is, he's a quarterback, so everything flows through him, whether he's, Jordan Love or if he's Tommy DeVito. But if you think about where the Packers are and all the is draft classes and all the young wide receivers, the two-headed tight end duo that we put a lot of promise into between Tucker Kraft and Luke Musgrave. How many of the internal guys, so I'm discounting Josh Jacobs, if on defense, Xavier McKinney, the rookies like Cooper, Bullard, and Evan Williams. How many of the internal guys, the guys that stayed on the team year from last year to this year, would you say did better than they did last year? I think the only one that can can put a convincing argument, and it wouldn't be that it would be super easy to say, is Tucker Kraft.
Um, yes,
And
Tucker Craft. Yes,
a lot of this is clouded by injuries. So like Romeo Dobbs, he had
yep.
his concussion injury.
Yes to Tucker Craft. I'd also say that Quay played better this year. I'd say Devontae played better this year. But as for
But
on
but
offense,
injuries
on offense,
on
I
offense,
think it's Josh Myers, and that's probably it. I thought Josh
that's
Myers
about it.
played really well this year compared to all of us wishing not be on the team last year, including us. And but yeah, I'm sorry, I gotta set it for my king, Emmanuel Wilson. He played better this year because he actually played.
Well, he
Because he
played.
played.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
which
no,
is
but no.
that is
To your
something.
point, it's 100% right. Like Jaden Reed for sure didn't do as good as he did last year. Uh Christian Watson a bit marred by injuries this year, but I thought he played a little better. But I don't think it's distinctly better.
Was it just yeah, exactly.
Romeo Dobbs,
Dobbs,
no, I'd say arguably
decent.
just
I would say
he kept
decent
his
season,
level.
but
He kept his level. Like
yeah.
he had a few injuries. He had his suspension. He was never really able to get into a rhythm this year. I thought he played as well as he did in as last year. But yeah, there wasn't really a lot of growth besides Tucker Kraft, and they really never got him involved as much as they should have. Like if he's Tucker Kraft's going to be the sort of tight end we think we think he should be, and that fans want him to be, they need to feature him in the offense more and get him
All
running.
those big plays that he was Kraft and Yak.
Yeah,
Those plays like the Rams game, like that came in the first half of the season. Everything sharply declined. And again, it's a synergy there. It's not just on them, it's on Jordan Love. And well, you know, that much is that looms over everything.
yeah,
But it is for it's why everything that we talk about the offense of like they have look at the explosive plays that they do. They're in the top 10 of certain statistics that I can't name off the head or off the top of my head right now, but everybody the general feeling about the Packers offense is that this is a good offense. It's up up to par of other playoff teams. And you and I, for sure, over the last few weeks, we're having these discussions about the concern of how does that translate in the playoffs? It's not been good the last couple of weeks. Can they turn it on? Can they flip the switch? That when we're talking about stuff like that, that is danger zone.
yeah.
That is not good. And I not to feel vindicated, but it does. There is some kind of like having this concern of like you think you want it to be unfounded. You want them to put in a game where they just
Or
run
they
all
prove us wrong.
over. Yeah, they prove us wrong. That's why the Cowboys game again in the playoffs last year, it will be the best playoff victory for a lot of reasons because it was so unexpected.
Yep.
But everything about the last few weeks and why and it culminating today where they had 16 yards in the first quarter. They didn't score the first touchdown in the fourth quarter. McManus's missed field goal looms large in how this game could have eventually be if they put together anything. But their offense just when it mattered. it folded. And you mentioned it, Jordan Love is a big reason why, but Josh Jacobs is as unimpeachable of a player on this team because as much as it was hard to watch him run into walls for much of the first half, we knew that he was going to break it out. Like his touchdown, or that what he's so close to getting that beastquake level touchdown at the end of the third. That was so like that's going to be there. That is a given. Like and not to just like say put money on that and be like that's going to happen, but he'll eventually meet the mean. But not everybody did, and that's the problem.
100%. 100%. So, let's switch gears to the defense because I thought the defense played incredibly well. Played very well. They hold the Eagles to 22 points. Like I think that's as good as you can really do against an
Is that
offense like this.
is that better than anything that we could have expected coming into this game? Yeah,
Yeah, 100%.
easily.
Like, and Jalen Hurts throws 2 touchdowns, but he only has 130 yards. I mean, Saquon had 123 total yards, 119 on the ground, and 30 or 15 of that came on the last play from scrimmage for them, where he broke it out as the Packers stacked the box, and he was home free for a touchdown. To be clear,
Yeah.
but
Yes.
he doesn't run it. He just takes does the right thing, takes the knee. But I think that might have been his longest run play at 17 yards. Like that's good.
Yes.
Like there was a couple of plays I wasn't too happy with. Um, in the first quarter, Saquon Barkley had a run outside where Xavier McKinney takes about the worst imaginable route to the ball ever, and it results in Saquon getting the big run. Um, Carrington Valentine not be able to tackle Dallas Goddard is tough, but Dallas Goddard's got a lot of muscle and a lot of height
Yeah.
on that man. Like that's just what happens when tight ends are physical and can catch balls like Dallas Goddard can, and so that happens. But other than that, I thought they played. I thought the game plan was really good against it. Like they only had the one Jalen Hurts scramble for 15 yards where they overextended and broke contain and the middle of the field opened up. But for all intents and purposes, this defense played well. The pressure wasn't there like you'd really want it. They only get one like real sack from Rashawn Gary. The other one was the weird play where Jalen Hurts slides near the sideline instead of just throwing it away and almost like takes out Lane Johnson's legs. That was a weird
Yeah.
play. But I mean, AJ Brown was a non-factor today. One catch for 10 yards on 3 targets. I thought I think it was primarily Carrington Valentine that was on him. Again, played very well. And I think it's a matter of this defense was out there so long every drive because you just can't the offense couldn't get anything going. And
Yep.
I think part of it too is let me look and see here if I can look at the team stats. Each team had I believe it was 11 total drives. The Packers outgained the Eagles today, 302 to 290.
Yep.
Like the time possession was slightly in favor of the Eagles.
But roughly 30, yeah, that's 20,
Yeah,
was it 29 minutes, 27 seconds for the Packers, 30 minutes, 33 seconds for the Eagles. So,
but it was from the get go. Like they had to be
yeah.
on from the get go. They had to keep making stops. Like they end up punting. Let me see if that's readily available here. I don't think it is. I have to go to the box score. Um, the Eagles punted 5 times this game.
Yeah.
Five, five.
Yep.
Like that's good. The Packers only punted twice. That's because they had 3 interceptions and a missed field goal and stuff like that. I mean, the Eagles missed one as well, but or no, yes, no,
Missed the extra point.
extra point. Yeah, not a missed field goal. Um, but yeah, like I thought Quay played well. Edgerrin Cooper was a menace this game. I thought Carrington Valentine played well. Like to be able
Bullard
to
had a good early
Bullard had a
moments.
really good tackle on the outside, shutting a block that was very very good. This defense can ball, dude. And I think like to as we begin to wrap up this pod in a little bit here, like this defense is set for next year. They need to add some pieces to the D line. They need to add some pieces at corner. But man alive, with the guys they got right now, playing as good as they are, I'm happy with Jeff Halfley's debut year as defensive coordinator.
Yeah, they gave up again. If the Eagles were giving the Packers every reason to come back into this game, that was in part because of the defense.
Mm-hmm.
They, for all the focus that we had on the Phillies, do we have Tom Brady? Phillies weapons, and look at AJ Brown, Devontae Smith, and how do you not stop Saquon, but how do you limit him from running all over you? It's like, well, we thought that they did a bad job against Saquon in week one. He didn't get as many total yards as he did in week one. It was kind of middle of the road for him, at least in terms of the season that he's having. Devontae Smith led the Eagles with what, 4 catches, 55 yards? Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
long 28 yard gain, which one of the big explosive plays that they gave up. But it was more like Dallas Goedert, 4 catches, 47 yards, got the touchdown. The first touchdown went to Jahan Dotson,
Right,
his only
but
catch of the game.
but that's it. Like
Yeah,
the
it's
only
that's
people to
it.
have multiple catches were Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert, and then Saquon had 2 catches for 4 yards.
Yeah,
The
it's
secondary
like
played well.
they did their job. The structure is there, and when you have to defend with your on your heels
The entire
at
game.
the 28-yard line to start the game and then the entire game, and you force more punts than the Packers had. Like, this is a game that the Eagles should have just ran away with
Yeah,
in all intents and purposes. They Jaden Hurts went did I say Jaden Hurts?
you did say
Jalen
Jaden
Hurts.
Hurts.
Jalen Hurts went nearly 2 quarters between completing passes.
Yep.
They were disruptive.
Yeah.
They were didn't generate turnovers, and maybe that we have one quibble, we
Well,
have that, but
I mean, even that quibble is tough to do when he only
he's
throws 21 times, and
yeah
Saquon. I'll check what he's had in the year, but I don't. I've never known Saquon to be to be loose with the football kind of thing. You know what I
yeah.
mean? Like I don't
But
think
I'm
he's
not either way. I'm not going to be like,
he
oh, you
had
guys just sort
he
of
had he had
force a turnover.
he's had 2 fumbles all season. He's lost one in his career in 1,500 carries. He's had 8 fumbles.
So yeah,
He's not fumbling. Like
yeah, the going rate is tough. That's
yeah,
basically what, once a year.
yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
And so like for all intents and purposes, you had to win this game with the opportunities you were given on your own drives because they got lucky in Brazil when they had the few interceptions of Jalen Hurts and the fumble that occurred with Jalen Hurts. But at the same time, like you want them to make a play, right? But when
yeah,
Jalen Hurts only throws 20 times and it wasn't really anything deep, like he had the one really deep bomb to AJ Brown on the fake tush
the
push,
weird, yeah,
and that was it. That was the only deep bomb they threw. The
hmm
one to Devonta Smith was like 10 yards downfield, but he ran for an extra 16 because he was wide open.
yeah,
But when you're not putting the ball in danger like he did in all game, it's hard to make turnovers like that, unless you're
yeah,
playing tight man, which they weren't all game. Which is again,
yeah.
I'm not upset with it. I thought they played a good defensive game, but to expect a turnover from Saquon or Jalen Hurts when that's the kind of game it has. The only other way they could have um, manufactured a turnover would have been a strip sack against Jalen Hurts. I think that's the part of the game of the defense where they need to invest and they need to figure out how to do it better because
Yep.
they got no push today on on any
A
sort
good
of
offensive line, to be
on a
fair, too.
to be fair a good offensive line, but
Yes.
the 6.5 seconds that Jalen Hurts had to throw that first touchdown to Jahan Dawson was the second longest in the NFL this season. And it was a
Yep.
four-man rush, and they just couldn't even come close to getting home. Like
hmm
it's a problem. It's a problem. Rashawn Gary had the sack, but I wasn't impressed with him this game. And frankly, his most of his season, I think they played fine.
Pro Bowler.
What? Yeah, which is telling on yourself, not you, but people. Um, and then like I just didn't really see anybody else much this game in the pass rush.
Yeah, that is the biggest quibble, or what am I, Rick Schlesinger using the word quibble? But yeah, that was easily the biggest problem with anything is that everything was a little too comfortable in terms of more so pass rush wise. If you can get to Hurts or if you can force him to make uncomfortable throws, that's when we saw blitzes. Like the structure and the foundation is there. That is the key. They didn't have their full strength defense by any means. They made a midseason trade with Preston Smith. They thought the young guys would get there, earlier than expected. And there were some games where things flashed. We were excited by Brendan Cox Jr. getting more snaps. Lucas Van Ness,
I mean,
uh,
fine throughout the regular season. Didn't really see much today.
I don't even know if Fine's right for the regular season, but Eddingbar,
Second
like,
second half, we'll say.
yeah, yeah. When the spotlight came on him, it was a little too bright for him.
Yeah.
But the foundation's there, and I think I don't know. I just don't want anybody to look at this game like, oh, the defense, right when the offense gets hot, the defense didn't get the stop that they needed to make this a closer game. And it's like we're not watching this same game. You shouldn't be saying, "Oh, the offense is finally hot." It's like we, what kind of team are the Packers trying to build? They're trying to build the best offense in the league,
Yep.
and if it's not there, they want to damn close to it. And I don't know what team can have so much helped by their defense and not have their offense come into gear and not have it, eventually end in a loss. Like this has happened before, it'll happen again, whether it's the Packers or whether it's someone else in the rest of the playoffs. But the defense did everything possible for them to keep them in this game, and it's super encouraging that I think my biggest concern is of how the season started is that they were so dependent on generating turnovers that they're playing this high risk game of like, yeah, you can generate turnovers, but who are you stopping? It's like, no, they proved that they can stop. Like
Yep.
a guy like Edgerrin Cooper might be one of the biggest reasons why that was the case.
Pick of the
But
draft.
how do you manage to marry that and then build up the quality of, whether it's getting people in the draft or someone like Jair Alexander, hopefully being healthy and, we'll tackle that on a different pod. But yeah, defense it was not the way that we wanted to go out, but I'm glad the defense did everything in their power to kind of just make sure that this was a respectable game rather than an ass kicking.
When's the last time you can say the Packers finished their season with a better defense than an offense? I can say in my fandom of watching, which is 2004 ish, probably fucking never. I
Maybe
think that's more of an indictment on this offense than it is a compliment of this defense. But Packers have a defense finally, and they need to
yes.
build on it next year. Add some more pieces. Hopefully, don't take a backup lineman in the first round with respect to Jordan Morgan. I'm not saying invest it in the defense again because we always bitch about that, but I think this would be the
Uh,
appropriate time to do so.
yeah.
And we don't get the draft that too much right now, but I mean that's the biggest thing is like I'm thinking, man, it's fun to have a defense that can get stops like this
Yep.
and can really just force a game to be tough and gritty. Now, the weird part that we haven't had to talk about in a long time is how the hell do you get the offense back into shape? And we said earlier, it might just be as simple as Jordan Love play like the quarterback that you're meant to be and not whatever this version of you has become. Because if that's the case,
That helps covers a lot of mistakes and a lot of things. Yeah.
and
That's
that's the thing
ultimately
is that like I was perusing Twitter as one does on a podcast, and Zach Ertz was talking about, or was it Zachary Jacobson? I think it was Zachary Jacobson. My
a lot
apologies.
of Zach's.
A lot of Zach's at Packers Twitter.
Zach is
No, it
hacks.
was Cruz. Damn it. Um, Zach Cruz tweets initially that this is 15 minutes ago. This is word for word for Zach Ertz. That run last year was almost a curse. Set crazy expectations. The $220 million contract set almost completely by the QB market didn't help. But no, Jordan Love didn't play at an insane, nearly historical pace. He did to end last year. He was still a top 10 QB in year two as a starter. Someone said he had moments of top 10 QB play, but inconsistent. And Zach Cruz responds, I don't disagree at all. He was inconsistent. Jordan Love needs to be better in 2025 for the Packers to take another step. But he also tore a ligament in his knee in week one, hurt his groin a month after returning, and his wide receivers dropped a ton of passes. Sure, all of that can be true, but he was 2 months removed from his groin injury, like after the bye. His receivers played better as the year went on. Wicks came around a little bit. He had the bad drop against the Vikings, but like I think a lot of the drop stuff is warranted, obviously, but it doesn't excuse what tonight's version of Jordan Love looked like, as well as the last month. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the problem. That's the not top 10 version of Jordan Love.
It's not even just putting a number on it. Like these things fluctuate. We say these things like he's the top five or all this stuff like, and especially with quarterbacks because it's the easiest position to be like, who would you take? Him over Brady or him over Matt Schaub, whatever. I'm not using comparative examples, but it's like I don't care what he ranks compared to his peers. If it means that he's been struggling, if it means that we're talking about the likes of Jaden Reed, Christian Watson, Romeo Dobbs not play up to their potential or keep ascending in their development. And again, a lot of this came down to injuries, so I'm not putting that on them. But all was not right with this passing offense for a lot of the year. It was just saved by the fact that you could throw a bomb to Christian Watson and maybe 6% of the time or 55% of the time he's going to complete it, and you get a field flipping play. Or Jaden Reed, he does magic in the open field and he stretches the field. Like he was such on a torrid pace for the first half of the season, and that just went away. Like there were statistical markers of comparing him with like having the most yards through 20 games of his career because that's what he was doing. He was just getting chunk plays. And Romeo Dobbs, like, he's not like a flashy receiver, by and large, compared to, Reed and Watson, especially, but he's someone that you can trust and he can make contested catches. It's 3rd and 3, it's a short yardage game, and you can do that.
Romeo's like the best wide receiver too.
Yeah.
Like he's gonna be,
He's your changeup guy.
yeah, he's as reliable as any receiver can be, but he doesn't have the tools to be like
But
the best receiver in his division or in his conference or in the NFL.
but at the same time that we're saying all these things, like all these, they have qualities of being a wide receiver one, like the potential of being a wide receiver one. They have not met that.
None of them.
How do you
None of
how
them.
do you improve that? You get a wide receiver one.
Yeah,
The days of this offense running by a wide receiver committee,
I think have to come
one,
to an end. As much as I wanted it to be.
I think it's gonna by default it's going to because Christian Watson is gonna miss the start of next year.
Yeah,
There's no question. And if he plays the start of the year, I'm not expecting him to be
healthy
Christian
all year.
Watson. I
Yeah,
don't even know what is Christian Watson going to be after a torn ACL.
yeah.
That's a big question. Romeo Dobbs just suffered his second concussion in what, a
Three
month and a
weeks,
half?
month and a half.
Yeah.
Yeah. When did he? It was the Saints game. Yeah, it was the Saints game.
Saints game he missed.
This would have been the Niners game then.
Yes. So he missed it. I think he missed at least one or two. So,
Yeah, maybe Dolphins. I forget when it happened. Yeah,
but I just don't.
but yeah, two concussions this close together is not good.
You could have weapons and look at all the teams that are still remaining in the NFC. The Rams have Puka Nakua. They have Cooper Cup. Vikings have Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Eagles have AJ Brown, Devonta Smith. Lions have Amon-Ra St. Brown. Jameson Williams is having a breakout year. Like They're none of the Packers wide receivers are have anybody close on those on either standard. And we expected that too. And again, that falls on Jordan Love, but that falls on the wide receivers. So it's gonna change by the circumstances that have you know are on the Packers' doorstep now with the injuries. But yeah, how do you revive a passing offense? Well, you got to look at the players that are playing it.
On this topic.
Yes.
Josh Jacobs post game. Uh, this is from Dominique Yates at Real D Yates. Josh Jacobs said the motivation for 2025 is for the Packers to get over the hump when facing top tier teams. As far as next year's roster, he says, "quote I know I'm going to try and get some guys in here. Most definitely that." Peter Bukowski proceeds to quote tweet Max Crosby, "You are a Green Bay Packer," and then in parentheses, or Devontae Adams, or possibly both. And I'm not sure if a reunion
Just locked
between
on brain.
listen, I understand. I get it. But like I mean what, Kay Adams talked to Devonta this week and asked if he was down for a reunion with the Packers and he said he's not like he said he's willing to go back to any of his previous teams, like if they want him.
It sucked in New York. That's what code.
Yeah.
It sucked in New York.
Yeah. But I mean, he's a free agent. He can go where he wants. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. I'm just saying it's what they need, Jordan. Right?
Well, they need the archetype of Devonte Adams. Can can Devonte Adams himself bring that? I don't know.
We'll see.
He's gonna be what, 34?
I think so.
Maybe I'm thinking he's older than he is.
33 maybe. He just turned 32.
Okay.
So
He's
he'll
got a lot
have
of Taco Bell in his house, according to commercials.
yeah. And so it's an option. It's an option. Anything else on the defense or the Packers in general as we wrap up this 2025 season?
Um, I would just say it's a frustrating end. Um, it'll be interesting going back. I think we'll how we go back into our Packer predictions pod. I think it'll be a lot different note than it was last year.
Yeah.
It might be a little bit more frustrating this year. I will just come back to this. Progress is rarely linear.
That is very
And
true.
if the Packers of 2024 did not prove that, I don't know what they did.
Right. One last thing before we get out of here. I just saw something from Rob Dombrowski, um, talking about how I mentioned earlier that Rob Dombrowski had talked to Josh Myers and said he thinks he avoided the ACL injury. But Rob then followed up with a different tweet saying, Myers also told me that he tore his pectoral minor muscle earlier in the season against the Niners, and he's played through it and never missed any time because of it, which is likely why it wasn't mentioned. So he's been playing through a torn pec for the better part of a month and a half.
Yeah. Football players are a different breed.
Yeah, incredibly.
Yeah.
So, a free agent going into the offseason, who knows what they do with them, kind of thing. So, hopefully,
I have a
I,
feeling of what it is.
I wouldn't mind bringing him back. This is a conversation for a different pod, but I thought he played very well this year. So,
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah.
So,
Also went through some terrible things too.
yeah,
Death of his father
yep.
and everything like that. So play with heavy heart in some ways and still, you know,
Went out there and did a damn good job.
and play through injury.
Yep. So, all right, folks, that does it for the 2024 season. My apologies.
That ends in
For
2025.
that, and then 2025. Um, talk a tundra coverage of the Green Bay Packers as they lose. Thank you all for coming on the ride with us. Uh, probably take a little break and improve some content. I know Jordan and I are both busy next weekend, which is like thankfully that they didn't play kind of thing. But regardless,
Yeah.
we'll be back in your podcast feed soon. We'll go over our season predictions and revisit those and hand out some grades to players and things like that. And then I know I'm excited for draft season, mostly because not to not to pat ourselves in the back or boast or ego too much. I think we've been getting a little good at it and seeing what guys we think are going to be good and which guys aren't. Not aren't, but like look, noticing talent is what I'll say.
Yes.
And so I'm excited to dive in and see
Also, it's in Green Bay.
that too, that as well.
There's a little bit of juice there.
A lot of juice there. So when they end up picking the like fourth best lineman in the draft, it'll hit that much harder.
Yeah.
And so, like I said, thank you all for listening. Please go ahead and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, and become a subscriber over at gspn.info. Um, I have some off-season articles planned. I have some ideas, particularly on some second-year guys that we ought to talk about, second and third-year guys we ought to talk about. So,
Mm.
uh, appreciate all of you. Go check out Eurostep at 1-6 over the Bucks feed for all things Bucks as they get absolutely walloped against the Knicks today.
Got
All thing,
MSG'd.
yeah, all things Brewers over at Cruising for a Bruising, and our Drunk Drawer Pod with Ab and Adager over at Make Time for This. So, like I said, everybody, thank you for listening and your continued support. We very much appreciate it. And Jordan, thank you.
Thank you.